So we're going to get right into the mock draft with Peter Schrager. And I admire him in a year like this because I have a feeling that a lot of proud mock drafters are going to be slinking away around 11 p.m. on the first night of the draft on Thursday. But Peter, you made a few bold moves in your mock draft, and I'll just sort of ask you what I heard from two general managers in the league last weekend, and that is that we're all going to have egg on our faces at the end of this draft because even the guys in the league don't really know what's going to happen.
100%. And I do this thing where I have a little bit of bravado where I say, this is not what I would do. This is what I'm hearing. And usually that's the way I couch this thing. And I'm like, all right, so I'm not saying here's who I would take, but this is what my league sources are saying. And when you go 0 for 32, it doesn't really look great as a reporter. This is not the year to do here's what I'm hearing, because it's not even smoke screens. I'm talking about a team in the top 5 calling me daily, asking me what I'm hearing about teams before them in the top 5. And that's very rare. It's very rare. And it's, hey, what do you got? What do you got? What do you got on this team? Bunch of new GMs, bunch of new coaches, couple teams that have multiple picks. And I think the biggest issue with this year's draft, Peter, is that there's no great players. Yeah. We're all looking at a bunch of guys who might be great, but last year's draft in hindsight gave us 5 quarterbacks in the first 15, and it gave us Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons. That's a pretty good success rate. There's none of that this year.
Plus, I think what has happened is that we've kind of gotten spoiled, and I think in a bad way. I kind of think this is going to be fun. This will be good for ratings. Now, who knows? Maybe by Thursday, we're going to know it's Trayvon Walker to the Jags or Aiden Hutchinson or whatever. But I think it's fun sometimes to have suspense and to actually not know and to have it be a real TV show. No one knew a year ago. I mean, everybody knew a year ago that
Trevor,
that the first pick was locked, same as 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I'm kind of looking forward to this, even though the mock draft will make a mock of us all. But let's start there with number 1. And you picked Trayvon Walker with the Jaguars. And I think what's really interesting about this pick, one general manager who is considered Trayvon Walker in the top 10 told me over the weekend, he goes, to me, the thing I don't love about this pick, and he goes, somebody very well could pick him. But, go back to December. He was not high on anybody's board at that time. He's really risen in the postseason. And I'm always skeptical of guys who rise in the postseason, because they haven't really played many more games, maybe the New Year's Bowl game or whatever. But this is a thing where what is the difference between Trayvon Walker on December 1st and on April 1st? And I guess I'll ask you.
Yeah, and I had another coach in the top 10 call me today when I had Trayvon Walker at 1 and says, I have a real hard time matching that kind of production with number 1 overall. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He did nothing in college. I'm like, well, it's all relative. Like, he had 5.5 sacks and he was in the SEC. Like, you can't take that guy number 1. And then another coach called me who's not in the top 10 and said, yeah, I could see it. Walker is an absolute freak. And in today's NFL, with the schemes constantly changing and everyone having to be multiple, he can play 3 different positions. He could play over center, he could play on the outside, and he could play inside. I went to Trent Baalke's history in San Francisco. I went pick by pick, and it was Anthony Davis over Brian Bulaga, an offensive tackle. It was AJ Jenkins out of Illinois. It was, you go to Aldon Smith over JJ Watt and Robert Quinn. It is time and time again. This general manager, when given the keys, took the physical specimen over the sure thing or the finished college product. I would go one step further in that, usually by this point, and you nailed it, I knew Kyler was going 1. I knew Burrow was going 1. I knew Trevor Lawrence was going 1. And I've got friends and sources in Jacksonville, and I can tell you, I don't know that Hutchinson's going 1. So the fact that Hutchinson has been the media favorite and the media darling all up until this thing And then we get about 10 days out, and there's a lot of people around the league thinking that it ain't going to be Hutchinson. I made the mistake last year. I was all in thinking it was Mac Jones based on early conversations I had. And then in the days leading up to it, a lot of people said, hey, Trey Lance. But I was like, no, because all along it's been Mac. Well, guess what? The 49ers chose Trey Lance. I'm not making the same mistake again. It's nothing about pride or stubbornness. When the wind is blowing a certain way, I can't be too proud of my first and second mock drafts to not change it in a third one.
Look, there's one other thing about Trayvon Walker, and you just hit on it. This really interested me. Like over the weekend, I talked to 12 people, general managers mostly. And one of them said two very, very smart things to me. One is, go back to the year that it was Aldon Smith over J.J. Watt. And he goes, it wasn't just J.J. Watt. It was Cam Jordan. It was a lot of big
Ryan Kerrigan, Cam Hayward, Robert Quinn, guys who put up huge numbers at that position. And guess what? Aldon Smith in his first 3 years in the league, Peter, was as good as any pass rusher in the history of the sport.
Hey, look, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't rip Trent Baalke for doing what he did, but I do think that one of the things that you have to look at, and you have looked at it, as did I, you have to look at a guy's history. So I don't know what I'll do yet, but I'm starting to think a lot about Trayvon Walker, even though, I looked it up, and I looked at 4 mock drafts in December. One had him 25th. One had him not being picked in the first round. NFL.com had a multi-round mock draft. They had him 45th.
Wow.
And, so I'm not saying this is going to be a great pick or it's the right pick, but I'm leaning toward thinking that it probably is the pick.
Can I tell you something before the combine? I've got, you got sources around the league. Then you got the sources who train these guys. And I reached out to the guys I know at Exos, which is the workout facility down there in Florida and Texas and in Arizona, San Diego, wherever they have their location. I talked to them and I said, all right, so just give me some of the athletic freaks that are going to do well at the combine. And one of their trainers was like, get ahead of it now. Trayvon Walker is going to be a top 5 pick. And I kind of laughed because, all right, here we go. Someone promoting their client. He's like, no, you have no idea what he's going to do. He did it, and I think he's going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I just go back to, and Mike Mamula wasn't a failure, but
it wasn't Warren Sapp.
He got picked because of a great combine. But anyway, hey, look, I mean, Tyron Walker is a real interesting player because, as you say, I had one guy say my first position for him, he'd be my 3 technique. Yeah. Because I think he'd have a chance to make impact like John Randall. And I think most other people think that he could be a traditional, 4-3 defensive end, or like a wide 9, defensive lineman. But you're right. He's very versatile. He's going to be able to do a lot of things. He's very fast, very athletic. I just wish we'd had seen more production at Georgia. All right. I think everybody thinks that if Aiden Hutchinson is there for Dan Campbell at number 2, that it's going to be a pretty easy pick. Your thoughts?
The only other name would be if they fall in love with Thibodeau, and I don't see that as happening. I haven't heard that as much, but I think it would be pass rusher. And if Hutchinson, obviously the local ties, but also comes from the football family. You've got Spielman, you've got, Aaron Glenn, you've got Campbell, you got a bunch of ex-players, and like Hutch, like he speaks that language. And I think it would be a perfect fit for what they're building there.
At number 3, you have Ike Ekwonu, which I think is a really interesting choice because a lot of people think he's the best tackle. Look, you hear now, along with some of the stuff that you had on Charles Cross, you hear from different people that any one of 3 tackles, Neal, Cross, or Ekwonu, are the best ones in the crop. But the good thing for Houston is that they have the 3rd pick when they're going to be 5 or 6 players, any of whom would improve them a lot, at two huge need positions, tackle and corner. Why'd you give him Ekwonu?
I gave him Ekwonu because I feel like, yes, they have Tunzel, but take a left tackle if you can in the draft, especially if he's the top one. And I've heard from people, outside the organization, they're saying, hey, defensive back, don't sleep on Sauce or Stingley for them. They're absolutely devoid there. I just don't know if I could take a corner third overall for a team that has so many needs. It's more of a building block piece. I don't know if Thibodeau makes sense there. If Walker or the Hutch was to fall, maybe that's the third pick, but I gave him Ekwonu. I think they have so many needs, blank slate, and they have the 13th pick too, if they want to get either one of the corners or get safety help with Kyle Hamilton if he's still on the board.
Yeah, I think any of those things are smart for them right now. I have been told that don't automatically give him Neal because he's an Alabama guy, and Nick Caserio through Belichick would be an Alabama guy, but they like him, but don't automatically give it to him. Let's talk about the Jets. I like your theory at number 4, where, to me, I think that they have an embarrassment of riches, relatively speaking, and being able to take potentially the best corner, one of the 2 best linemen on their board, and also, maybe the best pure edge guy in Thibodeau, who obviously has gotten a bit character wounded through the process. Why Thibodeau to the Jets?
He had a long meeting with them Friday before the Easter weekend, and I've got a lot of sources in that Jets building, and they didn't call me up or I didn't call them, and they responded saying he's the guy. But they wanted to get to know him. And I can tell you, after their meeting last Friday, they felt very comfortable with him. And the things that he said are not things that are criminal necessarily. And they're not things that make you worry about his character. I mean, this is a guy who's beloved by his teammates in college, was the number 1 high school recruit, played after really hurting his ankle, came back and played. The stuff that he says is just the same stuff that we're seeing a lot of young men say now entering the draft, talking about his brand, talking about why he chose Oregon over Alabama. And it was because I don't care about national championship titles. I care about national, businesses in the corporate world. And Nike is that brand, like stuff that, for old school football coaches might be a gut punch to hear, but it's going to be more and more with where we're going in 2022 and beyond. Now, for him specifically with the Jets, I'll tell you this. There were people in the Jets organization who really were hopeful in the free agent market they were going to bring in some pass rushers. It didn't happen. Robert Saleh is now in year 2, does not have an edge rusher. And if you go back to what he had in San Francisco across that line, it was Bosa, it was Armstead, it was Buckner, it was DJ Jones. It was all these guys that they had. Thibodeau's that guy. He's a number 1 recruit. He's an all Pac-12 performer. He dominated his bowl game. I don't think too hard. Don't worry about how he's going to fit with his brand in the New York market. Take the best pass rusher, get your defensive coach, the best defensive player at the position that is his strength.
Coming out of the combine, there was one thought I had about a lot of these guys. Ike Ekwonu turned down 2 Ivy League schools to go to NC State. Aiden Hutchinson has been journaling since he was 4 years old and still does. Writes it out, doesn't type it, writes it out. It has a stack of journals that he's kept over the years. And so I think this class of players is really going to be a bit of a different class. And by that, I mean, I will not be surprised if 1 or 2 of them at age 27, after, say, a lucrative second signing bonus and maybe 7 years in the NFL, if they just walk away from football and do something else. Won't be surprised. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a huge trend, but I think, if you look at Ali Marpet,
spot on.
Ali Marpet, a real bright guy, went to Hobart and William Smith. And the one thing that you always heard about Ali Marpet is he has a lot of interest outside of football. And I think that I'm not predicting any specific one guy is going to retire at 27, but just think about it, Peter. right now, when you think about the contracts, the second contracts that really good players are getting, you look at Denzel Ward, his second contract,
$100 million.
Yeah, $100 million, 75 or whatever guaranteed. So that's why, to me, that guys might say, hey, look, I can make a lot of money right now, but I've already made a pretty good amount of money. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be all there when I'm 70 years old. So I'm going to walk away.
I'm
not saying it'll happen.
No, and I know you're not pinpointing any of these guys, but let's go back to Thibodeau, because Thibodeau, I mean, I was at the combine, and an old school scout, a guy that I've known for years, was rolling his eyes to me. And it's like, this kid's got an NFT about himself. I don't know what NFT is. And he's talking to us in the 15-minute meeting about NFTs, and we're all rolling our eyes. And I'm like, yes, you can roll your eyes, but he's not the only one who's talking about NFTs right now. And maybe it's the other way around, and that you shouldn't be rolling your eyes, and maybe we should kind of rally around it. So it's not for everybody, but this guy can rush the passer. And I think, when it comes down to it, I can't imagine Joe Douglas, not getting Robert Saleh, a pass rusher, in either free agency or the draft.
Probably the biggest surprise I had in your mock draft was the Giants taking Charles Cross over Evan Neal. Give me your thoughts.
I hear they like Cross, and it could be smoke screens. And, I got people at the Giants organization, and back at the combine, there was a lot of buzz about Cross and the Giants. I know he had a great meeting. I know they all went out to his pro day. Now, the question is, do you even take a tackle when you took Andrew Thomas 2 years ago and he's your left tackle? And then now you're taking Charles Cross and you've got two offensive tackles, but you don't have necessarily a pass rusher or quarterback, all these things. I think the Giants are just going to try to beef up the offensive line if one of those three guys is there. And in my scenario, they're both there. Look, it could be Evan Neal, but again, back to the Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson to Jacksonville. I've had enough people tell me the Giants love Cross that I'm not going to turn the other cheek. I will put that out there. And if it's different and it's unique to other mock drafts, so be it. But I'd rather be the one on the limb going for it with what I've heard from sources than just saying it. And it takes a lot, it takes a lot of gumption, because, I put that out there and the Giants fans crush it. Like, how could you take him over Neal? I'm not the one. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I've been impressed so far with Joe Schoen.
Did you know him back at Buffalo or Miami?
What's that?
Did you know him from his Buffalo?
No, I didn't know him at all. I did not know him at all.
I'm very friendly with Brandon Beane, and Joe would always be at those games pregame, and I would talk to this guy and I would want more time with him always. I'm like, that guy's going to be a superstar. Yeah. So I've been super impressed. And then he was great at the combine when I met with him, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, there's two things that impressed me. Number one, do you remember when Belichick and Pioli went to New England and, they basically get there and 10 minutes later, Robert Kraft signs Drew Bledsoe to the biggest contract in NFL history. And, they get there and they really have to do major surgery on their cap. So they signed, I think that first year, something like 23 guys.
Yeah.
Antoine Smith, Otis Smith,
45, Otis Smith,
guys, and I remember, because a lot of those guys became the sort of cornerstones to that first weird Super Bowl win over the Rams. But I only mention that because, I think the one thing I like about Joe Schoen is that my first long conversation with him in January was basically, he didn't have any fear of slashing the cap. He had to do it because Dave Gettleman left him with a terrible cap situation. And he had no fear of saying, this is what we got to do. Do I want to cut these guys or slash them? No, of course not. They're good players, but it's part of the job. I'm not going to cry about it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I was impressed with that. And the other thing I've been impressed with him is that I think he understands that you don't win anything in the off season. It's just let everybody scream and let everybody say, oh my God, Giants haven't improved themselves. The quarterback stinks, everything. Look, this is a reconstruction season for the New York Giants, and they need to be in shape in March of 2023 to attack a free agency class and to start thinking about who their quarterback is going to be for the next 5 years if Daniel Jones doesn't play above average this year. So that's what I think he's preparing for.
And I would add to that, it was one of these deals where they kept on kicking the can on when they were going to pay the piper and address the salary cap. And he was just like, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off right now. We're going to do it. And I respect it. He'll eat, they might eat some this year, and it might not be good this year. And Daniel Jones might not be the guy, but look, the hire of Daboll and Mike Kafka. So you're bringing an offensive system from the Bills and the Chiefs, and you're putting it in Daniel Jones's lap. And you're saying, we're going to probably invest in the offensive line in the draft. It's do or die for Daniel Jones. And if it doesn't work out, we've got next offseason to address it.
Carolina at number 6, you give them Pickett, even though this has all the earmarks of, and Carolina doesn't have a pick for 130 picks after this one. This has all the earmarks of reaching for a guy who doesn't look like he's going to be the long-term answer. But give me your thoughts.
It's all the wrong reasons, right? It's, you hold your nose and say, well, let's get a quarterback because I don't know my future as a coach, or I don't know where we're going. And the owner wants to win and wants a quarterback. And look, here's the thing. If they had second round picks and third round picks, I wouldn't have given them a quarterback. I'd say, all right, Evan Neal, give him an offensive lineman. Let's go. And we'll figure it out with Darnold. But the fact that they don't have any other picks and they're in such quarterback purgatory right now, I think that that Pickett right now is their top quarterback from all the things I hear. I know we might be overblowing the fact that, Matt Rule recruited him out of high school to Temple, and we might be overdoing the fact that David Tepper's worth $14.7 billion and is a University of Pittsburgh alum, but those things might come into play here. And I just look at it and it's like, all right, we can win right in that. We could play. I don't know if we can win. We can roll the ball out, and this guy's NFL ready, and he's got all the markings of a great leader. And let's go to work. I did this pick on my mock draft. I held my nose, I closed my eyes, and I kind of put it out there knowing all the criticism. And that might be what Scott Fitterer does in the draft. Yeah,
I find it hard to argue with you there, even though I might not agree with it, just like you do. I'm going to pick and choose a few spots in the remaining 5 minutes we have left. You got Sauce Gardner to the Giants, very sensible. You have Atlanta probably euphoric when they see Evan Neal there. I really like Seattle and Derek Stingley. That has been my thought all along because John Schneider has never gotten a chance to pick a great player in the draft. Think about it. When is
They're always in the
20s time he's been able to pick a guy who people say, now this guy might be the best corner to come out in years, even though, his resume isn't that great. Seahawks are never in this position. And mentally, I just keep thinking to myself, John Schneider said, hey, listen, we dealt with Marshawn. We have dealt with some headaches on this team. We'll handle the headache. I want the great talent of Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah. And you look at that team, it's best player available mode. And this guy with Jamal Adams in the defensive backfield, finally you have a strength on this team. And it's not the Legion of Boom by any means, but here's what I was told. And this is a good thing for everyone listening at home. Sauce and Stingley are 1 and 2. You can have your order a little differently. Most teams have Sauce, but Stingley. Then there's a huge drop off before it goes to McDuffie and Gordon and Andrew Booth. So if you're Seattle and you're in the top 10 and you're looking at those two and you're like, all right, one of those guys is available, then I'll get an elite player in the top 10. And not only does John Schneider not get to pick in the top 10, they usually trade back a bunch. I don't think they do that this year. I think they actually need talent on the field.
Me too. I think that's really smart. I love picking Jameson Williams really high in this draft because let's face it, Jameson Williams probably, and what I've heard about him is he'll probably be playing football by Thanksgiving, okay? And if, let's say, the New York Jets, who are going nowhere this year, if they believe that Jameson Williams is the best receiver in this draft, and the surgery went fine, and the rehab is fine, and so he's going to miss 2/3 of a lost year anyway. You line up on opening day 2023, and you've got the best receiver in this draft, and you've got the best pure edge in this draft in Kayvon Thibodeau. Give me your reasoning for Williams here.
They really, really do want to address the wide receiver position. I'll tell you that they were very, very encouraged and hopeful that the Tyreek Hill thing would happen. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't happen. And it's Tyreek Hill's a 29-year-old player who's asking for $30 million a year for a team that's going nowhere. It might be a blessing in disguise. Jameson Williams, now you got a guy. This is maybe not a Julio Jones type or an AJ Brown type or even a Tyreek Hill type, but you combine him with Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, and you've got a good wide receiver core for the next several years with Baxton Berrios running underneath for Zach Wilson. So I think he's going to be the first wide receiver taken even before Garrett Wilson. And I think the Jets makes a ton of sense. And I would be surprised if the Jets don't take a wide receiver at 10.
You know how every time you do a mock draft, there are guys, the next two guys I want to talk about are guys who I think are fits with a specific team. Okay. The first one is Trevor Penning. You gave him to Baltimore at 14. I am giving him to the Saints at 16.
Okay.
Because I think the Saints love this guy. And I think that the Saints feel like we've got to give our quarterback a fighting chance. And we think Penning can play opening day. But I like him going to Baltimore too. I think he's a legitimate, September starter in the NFL.
He's nasty as hell too. At the Senior Bowl, he was tossing guys in practice where it was to the point where people were like, relax, dude, at practice, don't do this at practice. And he was after the whistle going after guys. And some people would roll their eyes at that. Other teams would like that. That's kind of up Baltimore's alley and what they're looking for. The Saints, to me, Peter, I'm so fascinated by. So I'll just be completely transparent. Sean Payton and I have always had a fine relationship, but I was never one of the guys in the media that Sean Payton would share things with. That's, Jay Glazer was always very tight with him. And I think Diana Rossini at the ESPN was always very close with Sean, and they would have great nuggets from them. I have no idea now with him gone. And there's not really that kind of like, okay, well, this is the persona of the Saints. They made a trade with the Eagles where they traded next year's first round pick to get a pick in the teens. And I can't imagine it's just to have 2 picks in the teens in this draft. Something's got to be up their sleeves. I don't know what it is, but I'm fascinated by them because Sean's no longer in the building. They traded a future first round pick for a draft that is not rich with talent, like where it's, hey, we need to get there for this pick. I don't know. Are they packaging that? Like, I don't know what that move was, and maybe you can enlighten me on it.
Well, okay. So I'll tell you what I think. And I think that they are smitten with a quarterback. I don't know which one it is. They're smitten with a quarterback and would be tempted.
In this year's draft.
But I think they'd be tempted, but I don't think they're going to do it because it would cost them everything to move up to make sure that they get whoever it is. But, Peter, there's one other thing. If you are the Saints, and you are thinking right now about the team that you have, you're thinking 2 things right now. Number one, we're better than the Bucs. Every time we play them, we're better than they are, except that playoff game where we turned it over and handed it to them.
Jared Cook fumbles up 10 points.
Yeah. And so my point about that is that, I totally understand that trade because they wanted to make sure that they're going to get 2 players in the top 20 of this draft who are going to walk in and start for them right away. Okay. That's number one. But I'll tell you one other part of this. They have the 48th pick in the draft.
Interesting.
And they believe that in this draft this year, there are about 20 to 25 players who they really, really like. They're almost positive because everybody's boards are so disparate. And because everybody's boards are so disparate, they're almost positive they're going to get one of their top 25 so they can get at 48.
3 guys in the top 48.
Yes. 3 guys in the top 25. They think they're getting 3 picks. So they're getting in their minds 3 ones this year. Now, I'll look stupid because that's what I'm writing on Monday. And I'll look stupid if they trade a lot up and go get Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis or whoever it is. Yeah. But I kind of think they're not going to do that. I think what they're going to do is try to get 3 players who can come in and make sure that they win 2 games during the season over Tampa. And then they win the division. and have a chance to make noise in the playoffs this year. Who knows whether that'll happen?
So I gave him Olave as a wide receiver who can do a lot of things that Michael Thomas doesn't. And then I gave him Jordan Davis, the big man inside, and said, all right, go wreck shop.
Yeah.
But gosh, I don't know if that makes them Super Bowl contenders, you know.
Here's the one thing, in following up on what I said about 3 minutes ago. Sometimes I rig a mock draft because I want to give players to a certain team. I want to give Chris Olave to Aaron Rodgers because he's probably the smartest receiver in this draft. He is, what I've been told, the most precise route runner in this draft. What does Aaron Rodgers want from his receivers?
Reliability.
He wants to know where they're going to be. And he wants them to be ready to go opening day. So who is more like that in this draft than Chris Olave? And I don't know, about a month ago, I was talking to Brian Gutekunst just about various things. And I said, hey, listen, I want you to pick Chris Olave. He's perfect for Rodgers. And I don't think I said that, so I'm probably giving you in my mock. But anyway, but I'm going to ask you two very quick things about the rest of your round. Pittsburgh Steelers, Malik Willis. Do you feel great about that?
Nothing.
You feel dart throwing about that?
Nothing. Dart throwing. Complete dart throw. And it's basically, are we all in on Trubisky? This guy fell to us at 20. What's the harm? Let's just take him and see. And if he beats out Trubisky, great. And if he doesn't, well, we'll have another good quarterback in our room, for a room that I don't think is particularly loaded with talent, with Mason Rudolph and Mitchell Trubisky. But yeah, nothing from the Steelers on that. And I didn't know where to put Willis. I don't. Yeah. I've heard a lot of rumors like 2 to the Lions. They're not taking Willis too. They're not. I don't see it happening. So I don't know what to do with him. Great kid, great arm, great story. I just don't have many teams that are like, he's our guy.
Yeah. The other pick you made, I really, really liked, is Tyler Linderbaum, 24 to the Cowboys. And here's why. Because there have been times in that draft room where Jerry Jones is excited about maybe another player. Let's go back to Johnny Manziel. And they said, hey, listen, we're taking Zach Martin, just relax. And for everybody who always says Jerry is a bull in a china shop on draft day, he's really not. If Will McClay and Steven and the rest of the room are way into doing a certain thing, I think they'll do it. And the thing about Tyler Linderbaum that I keep thinking about is their quarterback for the next 8 years is going to be Dak Prescott. They'd love to get a franchise center, just like Travis Frederick was, to be able to usher Dak Prescott into his mid and late 30s. I just love that pick.
So he would be an immediate day one starter. I've heard from other teams today being like, of course you put Linderbaum as your number one center. He's the media darling. He won the Remington. Also, like Cam Jurgens from Nebraska is the better center, or Zion Johnson from BC.
Yeah.
I said, that's fine. Whatever it is, I think franchise center is a good thing for 24 for the Cowboys, whether you can mix and match who it is. And Linderbaum has a lot going for him. He's an all world, wrestler, and did everything you could possibly imagine as far as accomplishments at Iowa under Kirk Ferentz, as well coached as they get. But that's mixing, people picking apart like the order of the centers that they're going. But I'll tell you, I would be surprised if they don't go interior offensive line.
Hey, there's only one thing I disagreed with you on this draft, okay? And that is Kansas City at 29 and 30, picking 2 defensive players and not getting a receiver. And I'll tell you the reason I disagree with you is because 3 years ago, has it been 3 years or is it 2? I forget.
Allaire or Hardman? Which one?
Henry Ruggs was the belle of the ball.
That was the
I
COVID,
realize
the COVID draft 2020.
Their eyes when they hear Henry Ruggs now. But you got to remember, this was a couple of years ago where Henry Ruggs was everybody's, the apple of everybody's eye. And I remember I heard a few days before the draft that Brett Veach was calling around trying to see if he could get up to maybe 20, 19, 18. And this one person who said, you won't believe who they want. And I said, who? He goes, Henry Ruggs. And I said, well, first of all, he's not going to be there. And he wasn't there. I said, he's not going to be there, but it's crazy them getting another receiver. But they always have this thing in Kansas City take more receivers than you need, because a lot of them are slight and get banged up a little bit. Plus, the way that they saw the game going is that if a guy becomes a huge star under Patrick Mahomes, who knows what happens? And now we're seeing the fruit of that. So I want to know why you didn't give him a receiver.
I didn't think the quality of the player at the position was there to justify it at 29 or 30. I have 7 receivers going in the first round. I know Brett Veach really well. I don't know if that strategy applies, if there's not a player they love. And I'm going down that board. Christian Watson is left, North Dakota State, 6'4" project. Sky Moore, Western Michigan, is there on the board. But like, I see Dotson going, I see Burks going. I don't know if this is everyone says, well, you can get a receiver later. I think there's going to be a great run on the receivers, and Green Bay is almost on the outside of that, and they might have to move up to get one of these guys. I don't think Olave is sitting there at 22. And if Kansas City is at 29 and 30, are they really taking the 9th or the 8th best wide receiver over taking a guy that can make an impact right away and be their, cornerback number 2? Or in my case, I gave them a corner and I gave them a pass rusher that I think could actually contribute right away. So I could be wrong. I understand the philosophy and all that, but there is a second, third round, all that stuff. And when they traded Tyreek, they loaded up for the next few drafts where they've got multiple first round picks this year, multiple second round picks next year, all this stuff. I don't think they're going to just reach to take a receiver. I think it has to be a guy that they actually are excited about.
The weird thing about this is the 22nd pick in the draft. We're talking about, a lot. And I agree with you. Packers may have to move up to get Olave.
I think they will.
But just remember, 2 years ago, Justin Jefferson is the 22nd pick in this draft. 1 pick after Jalen Reagor. I mean, receivers are the hardest thing. They really are.
So hard. And you remember that draft, Ayuk went a few picks later, and Kyle Shanahan openly was like, he was the number 1 receiver on our board.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there who, have taken receivers and have, we can critique them all along, but you don't know. And it's tough. Yeah. It's a tough position to evaluate. You go back to that. I think it was the Odell Beckham draft where you had Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham, but you also had Allen Robinson, and you had all these different guys. Devontae Adams goes in the second round,
Peter Schrager, you've been a great guest. You've been a lot of fun. And I've now stolen about 27 picks for my mock draft. No. So I really, really appreciate it.
Peter, you have always been a great mentor / friend / sounding board. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast. But if I go 0 for 32, let's not mention it next year.
You're not going 0 for 32. Listen, we all might go 5 for 32, but hey, that's why it's like I said at the beginning. This is going to be a fun TV show.
Yeah. That's a good, real quick on that. Because
that's what this is, because there's going to be a lot of drama.
I was arguing with someone at the NFL Network about this, and I won't tell you which side I was on, but there are no quarterbacks of mention that are worth noting. And yet there is more intrigue than ever. What rates higher, the quarterback draft of last year or the, I don't know what the hell's going on draft of this year? And we'll see. I won't tell you which side I was on.
Yeah, well, I can guess. Hey, listen, Peter, thanks a lot. Have a great draft.
You're the best. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.